Welcome back. The nation got an up-close look at former Baylor assistant Jerome Tang as he led the Wildcats to an Elite Eight in this year's March Madness. Matt Lively spoke with a reporter from Manhattan, Kansas, who got an inside look at Tang's first year as head coach.
Really excited to be talking with Glenn Kinley. He's been covering Kansas State this whole year. And Glenn, you've had an up-close look at Jerome Tang, who we know here in Waco really well. What kind of stuck out to you about Jerome Tang when you first started covering him?
Yeah, I think he's just different than any other coach that you see, right? I was there when he first landed in Manhattan. In fact, I was just talking about that in our show. We were kind of recapping or looking back on when he first got here. And in his introductory press conference, he just caught everybody's attention. And there's just something different about him. His energy is different. The way that he speaks is different. I think his background in ministry is probably to credit for some of that he's a very, very good public speaker. And then you're wondering that whole time, I hope he's not just a good speaker. Hopefully he's a good coach too. But I mean, you're talking about a team that had 2 players on the roster about 10 months ago. And he built a roster over the offseason of transfers. Then he got commits from high school and ended up obviously putting together a pretty solid team.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right about fans loving him. It seems like over the last 2 weeks, his popularity across the country has skyrocketed. He could probably run for president and get some votes there. What did you notice when you were covering him and kind of sending some of this stuff out to Twitter about what fans' reactions were?
Yeah, the people love him. The Baylor fans love him. The K-State fans love it. I can remember when he had his introductory press conference, he told a story about Scott Drew. And the story he told was that someone gave Scott Drew a bottle of wine when those two started working together at Baylor, and they told him to open it on a very special occasion when you need to celebrate something amazing. Well, they win the NIT, and then they win the Big 12, and then they win a national title, and as Jerome Tang tells us, that bottle was still closed. But when Jerome Tang got the job at Kansas State, Scott Drew came over and opened that bottle and said, we have to celebrate. And so I think the Baylor fans love him, K-State fans love him. The way he speaks is just so real and so genuine. He teared up in a press conference the other day when asked about a K-State student who passed away, who he had known and visited her sorority. And he just isn't afraid to be different than any other coach. And I think it's very, very obvious that he cares so much more about about other things other than basketball.
How excited is the K-State fan base that not only do they have a good guy leading their program, but they're going to have a good team now for seemingly years to come?
Right. I think from a K-State fan perspective, you can look at it and say, he did this in year 1. I mean, he didn't have any players on the roster, and we got 3rd place in the Big 12 after being picked to finish last in the Big 12, and he takes him to the Elite Eight. And he said in the airport when he arrived back in Manhattan just the other day, he said, this didn't end how we want, but I promise y'all, one day we're going to have a parade through Manhattan. That's what he said, and the people are fired up, right? And so people are excited, and if you look back, there wasn't a lot of excitement around Kansas State basketball before Jerome Tang was hired, if we're being completely honest. I liked Bruce Weber. I was a Bruce guy. I still think he's a great guy. But in his last season or 2, there wasn't many fans in the stands, and it was really nobody was that fired up about where Kansas State basketball was going. And for Jerome Tang to not only transform that, but to transform it in year 1, the future I would think is probably pretty bright.
All right, we're all excited to watch it, even from Waco. I know Baylor fans are cheering on Jerome Tang. Glenn, thanks so much, and enjoy covering this great team.